Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Yosi, Amram, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you, John. Delighted to be here with you again.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the Pacific area, I think Northern California is what you said.
Yeah,
And yeah, and this is the second time we've had a chance to talk. We were talking in the pre-interview. I was trying to remember maybe a couple of years ago we had a really nice conversation. It's great to be able to reconnect, to have another conversation and explore really our topic for today, which is leveraging spiritual and emotional intelligence at work as leaders with our teams, etc. There's all this talk about emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, which of course is important. But there's this kind of related, congruent kind of piece, the spiritual intelligence that I think is also important. And sometimes when someone uses the word spiritual, I think they automatically their mind goes towards like organized religion or things like that, which certainly have spiritual practices built within them, embedded within them. But it doesn't have to mean that. Like there's the spirituality is much beyond organized religion and those sorts of things. So we're going to unpack this, explore this together today, and see how this can be leveraged at work in a way that will help us to be better leaders, lead better teams, and just have a better experience at work. As we get started, I wanted to share Yosi's bio with everybody. Yosi Amram is a licensed clinical psychologist, a CEO leadership coach, and a best-selling and award-winning author. Previously the founder and CEO of two companies he led through successful IPOs. He has coached over 100 CEOs, many of whom have built companies with thousands of employees and revenues in the billions. In addition to working with individuals, Yosi works with couples interested in passionate, conscious relationships that serve their psychospiritual healing and growth. With engineering degrees from MIT, an MBA from Harvard, and a PhD in psychology from Sophia University, he is a pioneering researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence, whose research has received over 1,000 citations. I could go on. There's so much really cool stuff about your background, but I'm going to pause there. Anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on it?
no, I think you covered the basis, and thank you for the kind introduction. And I'll hope not to disappoint you and the audience after.
I don't think that's possible. Well, let's dive on in and you can
Is that a
frame
challenge?
that is a challenge. That is a challenge.
Okay.
Let's dive on in and frame up for us what you mean by spiritual intelligence. I teased it a little bit in the intro, but yeah, what does that mean to you?
Okay, great. So you mentioned emotional intelligence, and I think that's a great place to start. I mean, up until emotional intelligence came into the zeitgeist, there was a dichotomy in how we thought about emotion and reason. People that are emotional were overly dramatic, and that
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily a compliment. And then we said, oh, no, but there's emotional intelligence. And what that means is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information and to use that to help us function better in daily life. So, by analogy, what is spiritual intelligence? It's the ability to draw on spiritual resources and embody spiritual qualities in daily life to enhance our functioning and well being. So, what are those spiritual qualities and resources? That I'm talking about. So these are the qualities that have been celebrated for thousands of years through all the world's wisdom traditions, things like purpose, service, trust, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, presence, humility,
Mhm.
and so on. And it's that ability to embody these qualities and draw on them as resources in daily life is what spiritual intelligence is. So let me just say a couple other quick things and then I'll pause. One is to distinguish, you've highlighted the difference between spirituality and religion, and that's a very important distinction. But I also want to highlight another distinction within spirituality, which is there's spiritual belief
Mm.
and there's spiritual experience. So spiritual
Yeah.
belief might be believe in higher power or the immortality of the soul, whatever. Those are spiritual beliefs. And then there are spiritual experiences. One could be meditating and have our ego dissolve. We can experience oneness while walking in the forest, etc. So those can be all important, but what spiritual intelligence is not about belief or experience. Again, it's about that ability to draw on these qualities and embody them in daily life. So we can go to church on Sunday and pray and do all of that, and then surrender our ego, so to speak, in those environments. And then we come to a team meeting at work and we're trying to prove ourselves right and put other people down in order to elevate ourselves. So we've moved from trying to do what's right to proving ourselves right, which creates a toxic environment and competition and strife within our teams. So I'm just trying to highlight the difference between spiritual experience, belief, and the embodiment of certain qualities in daily life.
Yeah, and I appreciate you listing out all of those, very, like you said, any kind of spiritual tradition or major religious tradition tends to emphasize those elements, those components, right? And so regardless of where, someone in the audience is in terms of their own kind of belief or practice, you can be an atheist, an agnostic, whatever, or you can be fully into any of these religious practices. That doesn't really matter. Like that's not the point. But all of those characteristics, all those different conceptual areas that you highlighted, those are part of the human condition. Like they go back, wisdom thinkers across the ages, across the millennia, and everyone has those experiences. You may label them differently. You may assign, a supernatural, spiritual kind of external kind of power to it. You may say it's your brain chemistry. It doesn't really matter. Like however you want to think about it, doesn't really matter. But the point is, we all experience those things, and learning to lean into and leverage those as a power, as a strength, as something to support what we're trying to accomplish is in and of itself a powerful move. It's like you said earlier with emotional intelligence. Like for the longest time, doing anything emotional was totally taboo. It was like totally seen as something not a leader's not fit who is a quote unquote emotional and reactionary or whatever. But then we see, for example, the emotional intelligence entering the zeitgeist, getting so much more attention. And I think most people recognize the importance of emotional intelligence. You have things like the pandemic, and all of a sudden you can't turn the corner without someone talking about the importance of emotional intelligence or like pointing to the power of empathy and those sorts of things. And
Yeah,
so,
no, just
go
to
ahead.
reinforce what you're saying, that somebody could be across the entire spectrum of religion, spiritual, etc. You mentioned I've worked with over 100 CEOs, and they've ranged across the spectrum from devout atheists, if I can say that, to agnostics, to spiritual but not religious, to religious. But as you highlight, it's the embodiment of these qualities of presence and compassion and gratitude, etc., that makes us powerful. And the exciting thing is, as we talked about, these have been celebrated for thousands of years across the world's wisdom traditions. But modern science now, besides my research and all the other research done around spiritual intelligence, the field of positive psychology
Yeah.
started by Marty Seligman. So they talk about character strengths and values in action. And they've identified 24 qualities for good life. So psychology is no longer just interested in healing trauma and dysfunction and disease and pathology, but what leads to good life. And the qualities that Marty Seligman identified, the 24, over half of them map directly with the qualities of spiritual intelligence that came through in my research. So these are things like hope and trust and gratitude and humor and transcendence and so on. So there's modern science that highlights and aligns with this. And another field, the field of leadership development, studies done by Bain and Company, which is one of the top management consulting company in the world. They've studied thousands of employees and companies and looked at what is the difference between inspired and just people going about doing their jobs. Employees that are inspired are twice as productive, is what they found. And then
Mhm.
they looked at what were the qualities in leaders that got employees inspired. And it was things like servant leadership,
Yeah.
centeredness, presence, empathy, compassion, listening. So, all these quote unquote soft skills that fall under the categories of emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence that that make leaders more inspiring, that results in employees that are inspired, that are twice as productive as people just trying to earn their paychecks. So modern science is now validating what the traditions have been saying for thousands of years, that this leads to the good life for, better business, better bottom line, but also more fulfilled life. It's pro-individual and it's pro-social. When we act and embody these qualities, we're happier, more fulfilled, and we have positive effect on people around us, and we're more productive. So my research and all the follow-on research has highlighted now that spiritual intelligence contributes to our satisfaction, quality of life, mental health, resilience, individual productivity, group productivity, and so on.
Yeah, which again, whether I'm trying to think of this from the perspective of a listener who's like, oh, here we go. This episode today, it's all woo. It's all about spirituality. And so they're kind of quick to dismiss it. And I suspect that there's a subset of the audience who maybe that was their first initial reaction. And I would encourage you like to really open your mind and be willing to explore this with us for the next little while. If you don't like the word spirituality, fine. Substitute it with positive psychology. Substitute with any of these other things, very research backed areas that have lots of evidence to support all the things that we're supporting or suggesting and talking about today. And there's really no question that these areas lead to happier, more fulfilled lives, the good life for individuals, and that they lead to better teams, that they lead to better organizations. All you have to do is step back and think about like the best places you've ever worked, the best teams you've ever been a part of, the best boss you've ever worked for. And these elements are going to be present there, and so these are the types of things we want to try again, regardless of what label you want to slap on it. These are the types of things we need to be proactively thinking about how we can really reinforce, embed, and systematize even to the extent possible, like just so it's part of the culture and part of really what the experience is at work. And that's where I want to go next is, really what does this mean? So if we can acknowledge that yes, these areas of spiritual intelligence, of emotional intelligence, that all of this matters for work and it matters for leadership. Where do we go from there? Like, how do we start to put this into practice? How can I today as a leader, walk away from this conversation and do something that will move the needle and make my leadership better, make my team stronger?
Well, I think I would say a couple of things. So, first is the practice of gratitude and appreciation, very simple. So, we used to think, oh, happy people are grateful, but it turns out that grateful people are happy. So, make a habit every day to, at the end of the day, think through what are two or three things that people around you or things that happen to you at work that you're grateful for and you appreciate, and that will improve your mood. And then once you've kind of gotten into the habit of doing that, go to the next level, which is appreciate those people as soon as you can in real time. It's kind
Mm.
of a Pavlovian conditioning, if you will. If you give people appreciation, they like it, and then they'll go the extra mile to do things to earn that. So the practice of gratitude reinforces people in doing good work and improves their morale and motivation. So that would be one thing. The second thing I would say is practice real presence and attentiveness and listening or mindfulness, if you want to call it that. So, we're so distracted and overwhelmed with all the information coming at us, competing for our attention, whether it's text messages, emails, social media, and, whether it's in our professional or personal lives, you see people distracted by their phones and when you are working with a colleague, coaching as a manager, as whatever, and people are distracted, you know that the quality of the interaction, the creativity is going downhill.
Hmm.
So practice being present, attentive, listening, and the quality of human connection and interaction goes up, and the creativity and the productivity grows up. So those are a couple of things. The other thing I would add is find your purpose and align your purpose with the organizational mission and purpose. So we all have unique skills and talents as human beings. Some of us are really good in math and science, and maybe we're destined to be programmers or whatever. Others are, have great human skills, and maybe in a business context, we're great customer support people and make people feel cared for, etc. Well, whatever our scale, maybe we're great graphic designers and we do things visually, and we could work on ad campaigns and design user interface design, whatever it is. But ask yourself, what are my skill, talents, and superpowers? How can I actualize them? And when I actualize my skills, talents, I feel a sense of mastery and fulfillment. I'm actualizing my potential, and I'm naturally going to be good at it. And then when I could align those talents with the organizational mission, then I'm contributing and I have a sense of belonging, and I'm embedding myself into the mission, and I become a critical link component to support that. So as leaders, always ask ourselves, and as anybody at any level of the organization, what are my talents? How can I use them to contribute? Because that gives our life meaning, a sense of actualization and mastery, and a sense of belonging and connection and contribution, which is so fulfilling. So purpose, I'm talking about gratitude, I'm talking about presence. So those would be three things that anybody could do. And, as you highlighted, it has nothing to do with your spiritual belief system or not.
Yeah.
But, the reason we call this spiritual intelligence is because, these are things that are common to the world's spiritual traditions. In my research, when I interviewed people across all the world's traditions, 71 teachers, regardless of their theology, cosmology, belief system, these were the qualities they emphasized that lead to good life. And as I said, those came out also in the research from positive psychology. One other thing, why I call it spiritual intelligence, is, and when you think about what we do as leaders, we normally say leaders inspire. One of my first Harvard Business School cases was managers and leaders. Are they different? The same. Managers are clearly important. We manage resources, we make decisions, but leaders inspire. And what is the root of inspire? It's spirit. What is spirit? It's the animating breath of life. So we commonly say, we ask our friend, how's your spirit today? Or we hear a talk, we see a movie, we read a novel, a poem, whatever it might be, a song, and we say, I feel inspired. Well, what is that? That it's a felt sense of coming alive, where our life force starts to vibrate and pulsate and motivate and energize us. So, as leaders, we're here to inspire others through our vision, through our sense of purpose, with the mission. But we can't do that until and when we are inspired ourselves. So, leadership, first and foremost, is an inside job, and you got to be
Hmm.
inspired to inspire others. So, and what does that mean? That means connecting to our life force energy. And that's what spirit is. It's our life force energy. And when we're connected and rooted to our life force energy, these qualities naturally emerge and we get inspired. And then our life force in its full power, we feel aligned rather than divided. And that makes us most powerful. We're not pulling in different directions within ourselves. We're not torn, which weakens us. So I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like this language. And again, I can recognize how maybe for some people the language that is being used might turn them off a little bit if they are really more like, atheist, secular, humanists or anything like that. Just to reiterate, none of that matters. Like none of the your belief, your spiritual beliefs, your practices, that doesn't really matter. And so personally, I love the way this is being discussed, and I love the framing, and I love thinking about it in these ways. And I was raised religious. I'm not religious, so to speak, now, like in terms of traditional organized religion. But I do consider myself a spiritual person, in part because, like you said, all of these different pieces resonate with me. They're important parts of just being human and human connection, and regardless of where someone may be at in their own kind of religious belief. And so, as we think about this, how this will resonate with you, or with your team. Yeah, be thoughtful about that. Know your people, know, what may connect more with them or resonate more or less with them. But everyone believes in the importance of trust, right? Everyone believes in the importance of empathy, pretty much. Everyone recognizes the value of being a servant-oriented leader. Like all of these things are just so vital, and you can frame them up in a way that's going to be helpful for your team, and you can model in a way that's going to be helpful for your team. You said something a few minutes back that I want to double click on, and that is like I can't model passion, excitement, hope, energy, enthusiasm, all of those things, meaning and purpose. I can't model that for my team and expect that from them or hope for that from them if I don't first have that in myself, right? So
Yeah,
if
you can fake it for a while, but that's going to
people can
feel,
tell,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You can
people.
tell, and when we fake it, we feel yucky within ourselves, and after a while, we get exhausted.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Putting up that front is exhausting. And unless you're a really good actor, everyone is going to be able to tell. All it's going to do is erode trust, not build trust, because people can tell you're not being authentic. You're not
Yeah,
being true to yourself, and ultimately, it's just going to undermine what you're trying to do. And so, but if we can learn to have that within ourselves, then all of a sudden, yes, we can. People can also tell when you actually are truly excited and passionate and enthusiastic about what you're doing. They can tell that, and they can tell if you actually genuinely care about them as a person, as a human being. Like I'm not just going through the motions, saying the things they know. I know that they expect me to say, like, but I actually care about them. When you do that, people can tell, and then all of a sudden you're unlocking like this new little piece in the relationship that will not only give them permission to do the same things, but model for them how to do that in a way that's going to help them to be happier, more fulfilled, and more successful in their work. And then your team can start to thrive. And in many cases, I think it does require a bit of a culture shift because so many people are used to the buzzwords, the jargon. They've had leaders who are not authentic, and they've seen it over and over again where people say one thing and do another. And so I think people are guarded and they're skeptical. And it may take you a little bit of time as a leader coming to them in an authentic way. It may take a little bit of time to build that trust, but it does become contagious as you're genuine and as So if you're struggling to feel that passion yourself, that's a great place to start. Like, where can you find your meaning and your purpose? Where can you find your passion? And then start to find authentic ways to express that to your team, and to share that with them and to share your appreciation for them and what they're doing in genuine ways. All of that can then you start to build on that and the building blocks towards a really great dynamic culture.
yeah. And just to reinforce what you're saying about authentic and so on, all the research on leadership, one of the top qualities people look for in leaders is integrity. So you're talking about walking the talk. And the trust is built as people feel your genuineness. If you You could have all the great corporate values posted in conference rooms or whatever, but trust is eroded if you're not living it. So, integrity and that authentic alignment and walking the talk is super crucial for leaders to trust,
Yeah.
to be built throughout the culture.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Yossi, this has just been a really great conversation. I know at the time I need to let you go here in a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about, where they can learn more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word for today.
Okay, great. So they can connect with me. First, you can get my book if you want to learn more about it. It's called Spiritually Intelligent Leadership: How to Inspire by Being Inspired. It's available, wherever books are sold online and elsewhere. There's also a website called spirituallyintelligentleadership.com or si-leadership.com, and you can go there. And I have several resources online, and I host free webinars once a month that people can join, and so on. One other thing I would say about the book and about developing these qualities: you can read it and say, yeah, gratitude is good, presence is good, purpose is good, but you gotta practice it and develop the muscles. You don't just read a book about physical fitness and say, yeah, I need to be healthy, I need to eat a good diet, I gotta go to the gym and exercise. You gotta go and do the work and exercise those muscles. So the same is with these qualities. You got to build a practice of gratitude. You got to build a practice of presence. You got to build, all these habits. And the book goes through case studies with leaders, my client CEOs, and how they face challenges and how cultivating these qualities or working on them, invoking them, addresses those challenges. And then there are exercises that people could do on their own. So basically, people can use it as a workbook and to deal with what we're all dealing with, and building these new habits and new approaches. So I would just emphasize that this is a journey for development, and an exciting journey for actualizing more of our potential. It's not like, oh, I read about emotional intelligence, it's important, and now I'm emotionally intelligent. No,
Yeah.
you got to practice. We all have outbursts of anger or whatever it might be, and we just kind of practice over time how to get better regulated, more mindful, more aware, more empathic, more compassionate, open our hearts, and integrate our hearts and our minds and our bodies. And so I'm just saying it's an ongoing practice, and but it's a rewarding journey. We feel good as we develop.
Absolutely. Yossi, it's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Yossi can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, and you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.